Так, сейчас у нас будет пропущенный доклад Ольги Зайцева. 13 лет наблюдений за миграцией хищных птиц в Батуми. Наблюдение и значение для охраны пернатых хищников России. Это будет видеозапись. Внимание на экран.
Hello, my name is Olga Zaitseva, and today, on behalf of the Batumi Raptor count, I would like to tell you about our monitoring of raptor autumn migration in one of the most important Western Palearctic bottlenecks. So the bottleneck is situated in southwestern Georgia, near the city of Batumi on the coast of the Black Sea, and every year a passage of more than 1 million raptors is observed here. And in this video, you can see a typical situation during the peak of honey buzzard migration in Batumi. So if we look at the physical map, we will instantly see why it's such an amazing place to count raptor migration. This is because this is where the foothills of the Lesser Caucasus come so close to the Black Sea that all the streams of raptors are getting naturally concentrated in a very narrow corridor. And this intense passage of raptors was known here for a very long time. And so the history of systematic monitoring of raptor migration in Georgia started with counts of Alexander Abuladze in the 1970s. There was also some attempts to establish a count in Batumi in 2003 by a local nature conservation group. Unfortunately, they didn't have enough funding to turn it into anything regular. But since 2008, till the present moment, the raptor migration in the bottleneck is covered by the Batumi raptor count. We are an NGO based in the Netherlands, but we have a very international team of volunteers. And the data that I'm going to present to you today is based on the efforts of the BRC volunteer team. So a few words about the methodology of the count. The count starts at 12th of August and it lasts till 21st of October. Daily we start with the sunrise and we finish 2 hours before the sunset. Here in the slide, you can see the view on the region where we're counting from the south and from the north. In red, you see our 2 vantage points, 2 stations, both on the hilltops. On each station, we have a team of 5 to 6 volunteers led by an experienced coordinator. Also, here you see this red line that passes through both the stations. This is the imaginary transit line. It's approximately 12 kilometers in length. And when the birds cross it, this is where we count them. This is how our station 1 looks like. It is situated in the village of Sakhalvasho, very close to our field headquarters, so to say. And the view from it is really very nice. On a very clear day, you can even see the snows and ice on the top of the Greater Caucasus. Station 2 is a bit in a wilder area. It's in the border of the National Park of Materjala. So the conditions are a bit more rough here, but at least you are surrounded with wildlife there. And of course, everything that we count gets recorded immediately in the field in the digital form. And to help us do that, we have this amazing app made by Tractalen. And Tractalen, it's a database for migration count data. And actually, any person, even a private person, can use it. So usually you can get in touch with them, get a free account, and upload the app and then lead your own count. So here is the link to their website on this slide. And we record using their app, of course, the number of raptors passing, the species. We are trying to always record different age groups and different sex groups separately. And all the data gets daily uploaded to our website, link to which you can also see on this slide. And I really encourage you to go and check how the team is doing on the stations, because the count is ongoing as we speak here. And it's very interesting to check for the new data every evening, even if you are not present on the count personally. So the count's efforts are mainly focused on 7 priority species, which we selected, first of all, based on the relevance of their global passage through Batumi for their population, on their conservation status, and of course, their flight-specific behavior should allow us to count them with ease. So these species are honey buzzards, black kites, booted eagles, lesser spotted eagles, and 3 harrier species, marsh harrier, montagues, and pallet. We also have a number of both raptor and non-raptor secondary species, and usually the counts for this group are supportive for our data for some of the priority species. For instance, we are monitoring lesser spotted eagles, so we need to ID all the other large eagles with care and precision. This is why you can find all of them in this list. And we also have a number of non-target raptor and non-raptor species, which we count, but we do not estimate any trends for these species. So here is some annual data from Batumi, and just having a look at this table, you can tell that the passage of raptors is really impressive through the bottleneck. We have thousands of harriers, say thousands lesser spotted eagles every season on average, and a really incredibly amazing 500,000 of honey buzzards every year. Based on these observations, we did some trend analysis, especially for our priority species. And here in this slide, you can see in the left panel, you can see daily abundances for different species, their relative migration timing in the middle, and their annual abundances in the right panel. So first of all, you can note that, of course, each species has its own phenology of migration. For instance, honey buzzards tend to come in the first half of the count. And judging from the second panel, you can also see that there is a gap between the arrival of the adults and the juveniles. Booted eagle is passing through the whole period of the count, and large eagles are coming, for example, in the last half of the count. Also, in the right panel, you can see that some of the trends reach statistical significance. For instance, we see statistically significant decline in the number of passing juvenile booted eagles. And here it is very interesting that if you look at the total count, which is plotted in black, you wouldn't know that they are declining. So it's very important to record different age groups separately. We also observe a decline in the juvenile montagues harriers and very steady increase in numbers, both for the juvenile and adult black kites. Another question which interests us a lot are the origins of the Batumi birds. Where do they breed? And to answer this question, we checked the literature for the movements of the GPS tagged birds of our target species. And this is what we learned. So for instance, we know that honey buzzards and pallet harriers from Scandinavia tend to move to the west from the Black Sea. The same is true for the lesser spotted eagles, for greater spotted eagles, for the black kites that are coming from Central Europe, or even from the Baltic states, or even from West Ukraine and West Belarus. However, unfortunately, we don't really have that much data originating from Russia on our priority species. But we have some other data. And we can say that, for example, ospreys that were ringed in the north of European Russia, they cross the Black Sea in its eastern part more often. So they could possibly be our birds. And we know, for example, that for the imperial eagles that are tagged in the south of the European part of Russia, some of these birds would cross the Caucasian mountains on their migration. Also, pallet harriers from Kazakhstan in autumn regularly cross the Caucasian mountains. As for the steppe eagle, these birds, if they're ringed in South Siberia, maybe occasionally a single individual would wander through the Caucasian mountains, but the bulk of the birds would be passing even to the east from the Caspian Sea. And of course, Siberian black kites, they use trans-Himalayan routes, so it's definitely too far away from us. So based on this data, we assume that this is roughly the region where the Batumi birds originate from. And it includes mainly European part of Russia up to the Urals, maybe in some cases even beyond the Urals, Western Kazakhstan, and the eastern parts of Ukraine and Belarus. We have also compared the estimated breeding populations observed in Russia, which are plotted here in blue, with the numbers that we get in Batumi for the non-juveniles and non-juvenile individuals in red. And we see, for example, a very interesting situation with honey buzzards. So we count 3 times as many honey buzzards as are supposedly breeding in European part of Russia. But this is not actually that surprising, because we count over 200% of the global estimated population of this species, which leads us to the conclusion that the breeding populations of the honey buzzards are very much underestimated. As for lesser spotted eagle, it's very interesting because the Russian populations are breeding at the eastern border of the global range of the species. So we would assume that the majority of the Russian lesser spotted eagles would come through the Batumi. And indeed, we observe annually 1.5 times as many non-juvenile lesser spotted eagles that are, supposed to be breeding in Russia. And also the pallid harriers. We know that the bulk of this species is within Russia and Kazakhstan. So we should have like a really good proportion of these populations in Batumi. And indeed, we see almost half of it. So probably Batumi is one of the best places to observe pallid harrier migration. And to conclude, we have more than 1 million raptors in Batumi bottleneck every year. And those are just the target species, for example, not counting the small falcons. Our standardized data reveals stable numbers for the most of the priority species, but we see an ongoing increase in juveniles and non-juvenile black kites, and unfortunately a decrease in the juvenile booted eagles and in juvenile Montagu's harriers. And our data is most probably relevant for the raptor populations of European Russia, of Eastern Ukraine and Belarus, and of Western Kazakhstan. And one of the important missions of BRC, I cannot not mention that, is to educate the local community about raptor conservation. Because we know that illegal hunting of passing raptors is very common and it's a big problem in Georgia. We would like to include, for example, the youth, the young falconers in different research activities and to show them that it's more fun to study raptors than to kill them. So for instance, now you can see the kids which are engaged in our research work. They are tagging Levant sparrowhawks with GPS transmitters so we can learn more about their migration. And of course, last but not the least, the BRC is always very eager to make new scientific contacts, especially with people who work in the breeding area of our birds. So we would like to cordially welcome people from Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, and Kazakhstan, and actually from anywhere, both professionals and amateur bird watchers, to join us at the count. We have a very nice, warm, welcoming atmosphere, and your experience in migration counting is not that important because we are very gladly accepting the beginners too. And here you have the link to our website when you find daily updates in the application forms for the next year. The application process usually starts in spring, like in March and April. You can also follow us on various social networks. And in the end, of course, I would also like to thank Igor Karyakin and Yelena Schneider for inviting me to give this talk. It was a great pleasure and a great honor. And I'm really sad that I couldn't be here in person with you. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm welcoming any kinds of questions, and I hope to see you all in Batumi next year.
Спасибо, Ольга. Она у нас онлайн, есть она на связи? Если будут вопросы, может быть, ответит?
Есть, все онлайн.
Так.
Не знаю, слышно меня или нет.
Да, слышно, да. Сейчас, секундочку.
Да.
Thank you for the interesting presentation. I think that probably the most part of less spotted eagles migrating through your region are from the European Russia. Unfortunately, we have no exact data on the species, but very raw estimations. Breeding population is about 2,500 breeding pairs, but I think it's very serious underestimation. And in accordance to the published data by Mayberg with co-authors, the most part of European population, which breeds outside of Russia, migrating through the westward from the Black Sea. And so I think that most part of these lesser spotted eagles are Russian birds. Thank you.
Thank you. It was like more a comment than a question, but we do agree with that. This really fits with the published data on the GPS tracked birds. And apparently what we count in Batumi is really important for the European Russian populations of the lesser spotted eagle indeed.
Еще вопросы?
Thank you. Hello. Yeah. Thank you. My question is how many Egyptian vultures you get on an annual basis, like in spring and in autumn?
So we didn't really have established a regular spring count yet, because there was I think for 3 years people were counting in spring too, but we never had enough funding to continue it. So I don't really have any reliable data for spring, but for autumn I can say that it's usually no more than 10 birds observed, I would say. It's really rather rare, the Egyptian vulture.
Спасибо. Еще вопросы будут? Так, вопросов нет. Еще раз спасибо, Ольга.
Спасибо вам еще раз за приглашение. Надеюсь, в следующий раз поучаствовать лично. До свидания.